You can do that. One of the exciting things about where we've been, over the course of this month, we've been taking a look at God's heart for the oft forgotten. And if you'll recall, we started by being close to home, and we had Pelham Cares in to share a little bit about what they're up to and what they're doing, and invited us to see, hey, are there ways that we can be participating in what they're doing? We went a little bit out from the local kind of Font Hill area, Pelham area, and we looked at kind of Open Arms Mission and their kind of larger regional ministry and how they're carving out space for some of the most marginalized in our community. Then we took a more global look, and we looked at how Hope's Story is coming alongside to rescue orphaned and vulnerable children, to help them have a hope and a future, to introduce them to the love of Jesus. And friends, today we have an opportunity to hear from Lori-Ann, representing International Justice Mission. And I've had a passion for IJM for many, many years. And I think that after today, maybe you too will have a bit of a passion. When I think of that last song that we just sang, right? This is the air I breathe. A longing for God. A longing for God. And I think that there's a sentiment that echoes around the world from those who are experiencing the most injustice. Longing for freedom, longing for justice, longing for God, who is love and justice. So we have a video to play, and we're just going to start by watching that, and then we're going to invite Lori-Ann to come on up and share what is on her heart.
Hope is powerful. It dares us to look beyond what is and imagine what could be. Yet, for the problems in our world, hope alone does not guarantee change. It takes hope in action to do that. Right now, millions of children, women, and men experience some of the worst forms of violence every day. Violence that forces families into slavery, locks women in rooms to be used for sex, exploits children across the internet, and makes homes unsafe and abusive.
You'll be slapped, you'll be kicked, you don't have the power to fight back. If you do so, you know that the gravity will be more than what you were given before.
This continues because perpetrators think they can get away with it. Our hope will not stand for this. For over 25 years, International Justice Mission has been strengthening justice systems by partnering with local communities to investigate crimes, rescue victims, convict criminals, and support survivors through healing.
Sueño, las víctimas ya no estén buscando un sistema de justicia y estén sufriendo en esa búsqueda de justicia, sino que el sistema de justicia se acerca a ellos y las protege, y las resguarda, y las cuida desde las etapas tempranas.
We're a team of advocates, lawyers, counselors, government officials, survivors, and supporters who are building the future of protection, unified in the hope that one day soon, everyone will be safe and free.
We're transforming lives of individuals and communities through all the work we're doing through casework, justice system strengthening, survivor empowerment, the advocacy. Lives have been transformed. The more people we reach, the more transformation we shall see.
This is a global movement of justice, prioritizing the protection of people from violence. Building a world where traffickers cannot enslave. Systems of justice serve every person in their communities, and hidden crimes of abuse and exploitation are brought to light, so that survivors can not only hope for safety and freedom, but expect it.
That judge immediately said he's proved guilty. I was scared before, but when he was taken in, I said, wow, I feel free. I felt I had got that freedom, total freedom.
If millions of people come together and make the dignity of the individual the preeminent issue and protect their bodily well-being and their mental well-being so that they will not be exploited anymore. The entire world would be a safer place for everyone.
To those who are unified in the hope that one day soon, all people in the world could be free from violence. Together, let's courageously engage in the work of justice today and relentlessly move toward a safer tomorrow until all are free. Proving hope in action is the most powerful force in the world. And with it, justice is unstoppable.
Good morning. That video always gets me pumped up. So I'm very happy to be here with you today. Thank you for the beautiful introduction, John. I felt so welcome already, even getting ready for this talk. So my name is Lorianne Dewick. I work at International Justice Mission Canada. That's the Canadian team of our global team across 17 countries. And it's lovely to be here with you in the beautiful Pelham region. And as you saw in the video and on this poster here, our mission is to rescue millions, protect 500 million people from ever experiencing violence in the first place, and to make justice for people in poverty unstoppable. Sounds like a pretty audacious goal, but I think that's what we can do as believers in Christ who saw Jesus raised from the dead. Am I right? Am I right? Yeah. Let's go. Okay, awesome. So here's a map of the different countries that we work in. I know it's a bit small. I've also left some booklets in the front that have a bigger map, but you can see where we work in the different areas that we're in. So we work to end slavery, so sex trafficking, labor trafficking around the world. We work to end violence against women and children, domestic abuse, intimate partner violence, and we work to end police abuse of power. So those would be cases where someone is unlawfully and unfairly thrown in prison or interacted with in an unfair way by the police. And so you can see the different offices we have. Well, you're not supposed to see that yet. It's summertime. You're here at church. And you'll probably have some great plans this afternoon. So thanks for being here. And I think we all have really good summer memories. I know when I was little, I got to read books a lot. I was with my cousins, running around, playing outside, going to the splash park. Now if I go in the splash park, it's a little weird. So I'm waiting for my niece to grow up that I can just take her with me and we can go together. It'll be great. But yeah, summer is fun. And then all of a sudden you get to that age where you need to get a summer job, right? And it's kind of a bummer. But, I think we've all also had some good summer jobs. And so I'm going to tell you about one of my favorite summer jobs. So now you get to see the picture. So one of my favorite summer jobs was as a tour guide in Ottawa. And you can probably envision me, with the umbrella like, hi, welcome. You're welcome to Ottawa. I'm Lorianne. It's nice to meet you. And so I was giving free tours and some private tours like 3 to 6 times a week. It was a 2-hour tour. I'd share about the history, show people the sights. If you've ever been to Ottawa. Has anyone been to Ottawa? I wonder if any of you were on my tours. Okay, some feedback would be great. But it was lovely. I got to practice languages. I got an incredible sandal tan, which did not go away the entire year. And I met a lot of interesting people. And as we know, training for any job is really important, right? Training matters. It really can make or break how you do. And so for Ottawa walking tours, there was 2 types of training. There was the script, the knowledge training. And so I got my proprietary script. I had to sign an agreement that I would not share the script with anyone or do any tours for my own gain. It was very serious. And then I had to learn the route. That was the second part of the training. So I followed my boss. As he did the route, I took notes. I watched how he interacted with everyone. And then he followed me to see how I did and how I interacted with everyone. And then once he saw that I had the script right and I had the route right, then I was off on my own for 4 months and I had a great summer. And I could tell that my training was working and that I was improving and getting better by the amount of tips I got at the end, right? Tips make pretty good feedback if you're doing well, if you were funny, if you found the shade so people didn't get heat stroke. It was very important. So that's how we, applied the training, and you could say I got wiser, and that'll be a key word for today. Because not all of us will be tour guides, but all of us can become wiser. And the Bible actually talks a lot about wisdom, and that's where we're going to spend our time today, is in Proverbs and James, two of the wisdom literature books, and they provide instruction, they provide training for how we can become more godly and more like Jesus in three areas: the way that we think, what we believe, the way that we talk to others, and the way that we act. So that was my transition from funny story to what we're talking about today for anyone who wants speaking tips 101. So one of my favorite verses in all of the Bible is actually this one from Proverbs. And it's the path of the righteous, which is also a synonym for the word just. The path of the righteous is like the light of dawn, which grows brighter until the full light of day. And so I just found a picture online. Honestly, I could have taken this picture here today if I came early enough at the sunrise, but I didn't wake up that early. But this is the image that we can have of the life of the righteous and the just. It starts, you see the sun coming, and you know it's going to be a good day. It's just going to get brighter. It's just going to get hotter. Things are going to grow. Things are going to be beautiful. There's going to be life. There's going to be abundance. There's going to be blessing for everybody, not just the individual, but also for the society. And so that's what I think, what wisdom and justice, that's what they do. They just bring that brightness to everybody. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to give some action steps for how you can get involved with IJM, and hopefully just a lot of other things you can take into your summer and into your week. So let's talk about wisdom. Has anyone read the book of Proverbs recently? You can raise your hand. Great. Okay, good. You'll fact check me. Has anyone read James recently? Great. Some people are just studying the wisdom literature already. Perfect. So the first time I read Proverbs as a kid, it was very confusing. It's pretty chaotic. There's a lot of statements, a lot of names, a lot of seemingly contradictory advice. But then I read James as a kid, and I was like, this makes sense. This is 5 chapters. He's very direct. I come from a German background, so I was like, this is good. We can follow this. But really, both are considered wisdom literature, and they actually have a lot of characteristics that cross over. And so I'm going to share a few with you, and there's other wisdom literature in the Bible as well. There's also other wisdom literature from that era, and they kind of have a few characteristics. So one, they capture instructions that are going to be passed from one generation to the next. They also tended to prepare youth or prepare the reader for their education or for their career. And in Proverbs, it's actually also to prepare you just for life in general and prepare you to be someone who loves God and loves your community. So there's a bit of an emphasis in Proverbs about your spiritual training and your spiritual education. Actually, there's a big emphasis on that. And so wisdom literature in the Bible is not just sayings for success, sayings for your wall, sayings for your, pillow. They're great. Some Proverbs would be weird on a pillow, but there's some good ones. But what Solomon, the author of Proverbs, and some of the other contributors, and James, what they really want us to know is how to distinguish right and wrong, how to follow God, and in James' case, how to follow his older brother, Jesus. What did Jesus say? How can we be like him? And so both of these books, they cover a lot of scenarios. They cover daily life. They cover life in the courts. They cover life at home. They're really for everybody, and they use a lot of contrast, a lot of juxtaposition. And what's special is as you read wisdom literature is it's really for everyone. There were other books at the time that were more for nobility or more for certain classes, but as you read Proverbs, it's talking to the king just as much as it's talking to the laborer in the field. James really talks to people who are wealthy and people who are in situations of vulnerability. So we see that beautiful universal aspect of wisdom. So that's a lot of characteristics of wisdom literature. So let's look at some definitions. We're going to try to define wisdom and justice. There's a lot more. You could write whole books and novels about definitions, but we'll just use these. So what is wisdom? Well, wisdom's more than just knowledge, because we all know those smart people who can't live life, right? We all know them. They're so brilliant, but they don't know how to do some certain things. So wisdom is more than just knowledge about life. It's actually how to act on it, how to do it. And godly wisdom is not just knowledge about God, it's how to live in a way that honors God and loves our neighbor. So it's applying what we know to become more like Jesus. And there's some verses I have on the screen that really give us some great outlines. So James 3:17, love this verse because it's a very countercultural definition of wisdom, and it really cuts to the heart for me anyways, is that wisdom from above is first of all pure. It's also peace-loving. It's gentle at all times. It's willing to yield to others. That's a tough one. It is full of mercy and the fruit of good deeds. It shows no favoritism and is always sincere. Try living that one our whole lives. We'll always have something to go back to. So that's what wisdom looks like. So how do we get it? Where is it from? Well, Proverbs says the fear of the Lord. So having a right understanding of who God is, who we are, being humble towards him, that's the start of the knowledge and the start of wisdom. And how do we get it? Well, thankfully, we can just ask. We have a good God, and he is wise, and he says, if you lack wisdom, ask God. He'll give generously to everyone without finding fault. That's huge. And it will be given to them. So we're off to a good start. We know what wisdom is. We can all ask for it. We can all get it. Okay, what is justice? So after I started working at IJM, International Justice Mission, I've been here, in October will be 3 years, so I started reading the Bible very differently after I started at International Justice Mission, because I started noticing how much the Bible actually talks about justice and people who are in situations of vulnerability and how the community is called to rally around them. And so I was reading through Proverbs again recently with my Bible study, and right at the beginning, it starts talking about justice. It says, the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, for gaining wisdom and instruction. Great, we talked about that. For understanding words of insight. Again, receiving instruction in prudent behavior. So now we're getting into the action part. And what are we doing? Well, we're going to do what is right and just and fair. And Proverbs continues to give a lot of examples for how everyone, from the king down to the laborer, can act with justice and righteousness and equity. And so another definition from Augustine, who was a leader in the faith, is he defines justice as giving each person their due from God. So what God has given them, life, love, talents, resources, that is what they have, and injustice would be to take that away from them. And wisdom literature takes justice and injustice very seriously and lays out consequences for each path. So if we go back to our theme verse from today, it says, the path of the righteous, the just, is like the light of dawn that grows brighter and brighter until the full light of day. It sounds great. We all love being in the sun. Well, the path of the unjust doesn't end the same way. And the verse continues and says, but the way of the wicked, which we can assume is also the unjust, is like deep darkness. There's those contrasts. They do not know what makes them stumble. So we see blessing and honor and joy and fruitfulness for people who are walking in wisdom and justice. And we're seeing confusion and chaos and a warning for people who walk in opposition. And I'm assuming today we probably want to be on the path of the righteous and the just. So we're going to talk through the characteristics, a few items of what the righteous and just, what do they believe, what do they say, and what did they do? And that's going to be, again, our 3 areas for today. So, first topic, knowledge. Back to my tour guide days, the script was very important. It would set the direction for everything else I did, right? The script is my history, my facts, my route, my information. But in my situation, the stakes were pretty low, right? Like if I messed up on a fact about Canada's history, it might affect 30 people in my tour group. And they could Google it, or someone would come up on the side and say, psst, that was wrong. Here's the right thing. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. 2 minutes later, hi everyone, I just wanted to let you know that what I just said was wrong. So it was pretty easy to course correct, right? But faulty information and beliefs about wisdom and justice are a lot more serious. The stakes are high. Why? Well, there's 50 million people in situations of modern day slavery today. So that's 50 million people or more, that's all we know of, who are being trafficked. That's more than the population of Canada. And trafficking exists, if you go deep, deep down, there's some very twisted beliefs and faulty information that's being used by perpetrators, that's being used by people. And so here's what they're believing. Here's what they know. This is why they think they can get away with this. So let's talk about some beliefs that undermine justice. Well, the justice system isn't functioning properly, and it likely never will. So I'll never be caught. The person I'm abusing, they probably won't tell anybody about what they're experiencing because they're too scared for their own safety and the safety of their community. They'll never tell anybody. Well, and maybe if they do tell somebody, the police or the investigators who come to the scene of the crime, well, I'll just convince them with money or with my connections that they should just let it go, should just leave it. And worst case scenario, very unlikely, the perpetrators know this in certain contexts, if the case makes it to court, if I am called to court, I'm arrested and I go to court, I have more money than the person that I abused. I can hire a better lawyer, and I can make sure that I'm defended and that I can delay the case or disrupt the case, and I'll exhaust the victim, and they'll never come to court, and I will get away and to keep doing what I'm doing. And unfortunately, this is what International Justice Mission, what we see on a daily basis, is these are the types of beliefs that are really holding people in very serious and violent situations. The perpetrators, they believe they can't be stopped, and the victims believe, I'm never going to receive justice anyways, so why try? And if we just stop the message here, that'd be very depressing. But obviously, there's other people who don't believe this. Well, why don't they believe this? Well, if we look in the Bible, and if we look in wisdom literature, there's a very different script, a very different perspective, that if we live into that, things are going to be different, and we've seen how things can be different. Okay, let's talk about the new script. Well, wisdom literature, Proverbs says, God is our maker. God has made everyone equal. Everyone deserves to be treated the same. What does that mean? Well, that means that injustice and oppression are morally wrong. All through James and all through Proverbs, it says injustice is wickedness, and God will punish it. He sees it. You will not get away with it. It also just talks about how glorious that justice actually is. Justice is what's going to bring stability to a nation. It's going to bring protection. It's going to bring wealth. It's going to bring wholeness. And so we have to pursue justice at all costs. And of course, I'll just put the rest of the symbols up. Proverbs talks about, we already talked about, there's consequences for people who act unjustly and who oppress people in poverty, and that God is actually on the side of the people who are being oppressed. God is called their defender, their redeemer, the Lord of hosts. And he sees this, and he is going to take action. And it also talks about the blessings for the community who pursues wisdom and justice, that God also sees those communities. God sees this church. God sees any sort of community or organization that is actually pursuing justice, that's stopping violence and oppression, and he's going to reward them. And it doesn't always talk about that might be physical rewards here, or just this knowledge that we are on the same line as our Creator. And so these beliefs have power, right? Beliefs have power. And so I'm going to share two stories about how these beliefs have really changed the lives of two ladies. And this is Jacqueline. Jacqueline's actually this tall. She's lovely. I met her in Guatemala last year. And so she is a mother, she's a lawyer, she's an advocate. But her story didn't start out that way. When she was young, she was actually sexually abused by a family member for years and didn't tell anyone because of those beliefs. Finally, her mother did find out, and so they reported the crime to the police, and then the police called up International Justice Mission and said, hey, can you work with us on this case? And so IJM lawyers worked with Jacqueline and her mom and brought the case to court, and they actually did get a conviction, which was a very big deal at the time. And so IJM aftercare workers supported Jacqueline. She regained confidence. She was able to testify in court. She was able to kind of start life again. And Jacqueline believes that God heard her in her situation and that he called her, he has called her, he is calling her to be an advocate for those experiencing sexual violence in her country and actually around the world. Her knowledge and her tenacity have taken her globally to events. And she is now a part of what's called the Global Survivor Network, and she believes that things can change. And she knows, this is her knowledge, she knows that God hears the cries of the oppressed because he heard her. It's a very, very powerful testimony. And in October, I'm going to meet Ruby. Her face is covered for privacy reasons. She is a survivor, and she is a lovely person. I'm very excited to meet her. And she'll be coming from the Philippines to talk with Christian and corporate leaders in Vancouver. And she's hoping for, and she believes in something as well, the end to the online sexual exploitation of children. This is a very upsetting crime type. And it's when children are actually abused in front of a webcam. So somebody pays somebody else to direct abuse, live stream. And in a moment of deep despair after years of this, she said, God, if you're real, you need to get me out of this. And the next day is when International Justice Mission staff came to get her out of that situation. They had heard the report and they came. And honestly, in days of cynicism, we think that's too good to be true, right? Come on. You said a prayer and the next day someone showed up? But if you actually take wisdom literature seriously and you believe what God's saying here, you are going to believe that God hears the cries of the oppressed and that he's going to act, and he's going to act through his people. All right, that was some beliefs. Let's talk about talking. I love to talk. I think some of you probably also like to talk, which makes wisdom literature a bit scary because it has a lot to say about how we use our words. And James says that watching our words is actually top priority for Jesus followers. And it makes sense, right? We all know how powerful words are. I mean, we were even that beautiful passage you read about the words we sing and the other things that we know we've had interactions. We have memories of very incredible words that changed our lives and very hurtful words that still sting a little bit. And so at International Justice Mission, we also know the power of words. You probably heard some very powerful words in that video today. There's words that actually keep people trapped in slavery and in situations of fear and violence. And these phrases, they're powerful. Things like, I will kill you if you try to escape. No one loves you like I do, so stay with me. No one will ever find you here. Don't you dare try. And these words come up from a place of violence, of injustice, and they're going to sink deep into the soul of the person who's hearing them. And it's going to create a warped view of themselves, it's going to create trauma, and it's going to create a life that is pretty void of hope and joy. But, praise God, we also know that words have power for good. And they can totally change the situation. Words like, you're free now. You get to go home. Your abuser is under arrest. He can't hurt you anymore. You don't have to go back there. You're safe. Whew. Why are words so powerful? Well, it's because we have a wise and a just God who speaks. He spoke the world into existence. He spoke us into existence. Jesus is called the Word made flesh. Words matter. They have power. And so Proverbs gives us some very clear directions on how we can speak. How do the wise and the just speak? Proverbs 31, 8 and 9. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up. Judge fairly. Defend the rights of people who are poor and needy. Proverbs 24, 24 to 26. These are also the sayings of the wise. To show partiality in judging is not good. Whoever says to the guilty, "You're innocent," will be cursed by the peoples and denounced by nations. But it will go well with those who convict the guilty, and rich blessing will come on them. This is always the fun one for youth groups. An honest answer is like a kiss on the lips, right? Honesty, justice. And you could be saying to me, "Lauren, that's great. I love these verses, but I'm not a lawyer. Where am I supposed to do this?" Okay, I thought this through. I've got some examples. So if you hear somebody communicating, having a hard time communicating because of language barriers or other reasons, is there a way that you can respectfully join in and say, "Hi, can I help?" and help facilitate that conversation? Or what about if you hear gossip or untrue information? What do you do? Do you ignore it? Just let it go? Do you share it? Do you correct it? If there's an issue that you're passionate about, are you grumbling and complaining? Or are you actually writing an email or letter to your member of parliament and saying, "Hey, this needs to change"? And if it comes to policies and decisions in your region here in Pelham, are the voices of the marginalized being included? How are we running our city and our society? And families, I would really encourage you to practice wisdom in how you speak to one another. I am grateful. I love my mom and dad. I have 3 younger brothers. Some of them are married now. And so the family just keeps growing. And we all know that how we speak as a family can have the most serious effects, for good and for ill. Words shape us, and they're going to echo in our minds for years to come. And so, just going to be honest here, if anything is coming to mind right now, if the Lord, or in the moment of silence beforehand, is bringing something up that maybe you wish you didn't say, or that somebody said to you and you want to carry on that conversation, I'd encourage you to send that text, have that call, go find that person right after service and really reconcile, because that is also a part of the path of the wise. It's humility, it's apologies, it's reconciliation. So I want to put that in there as an application. All right, almost getting to our last section here. We know that talking, we can change a lot of things. Our tone, our speech, our inflection, vocabulary, timing. There's a lot we can work on here. It's a whole lifetime. But God will help us. He'll give us the wisdom, and He'll show us the way to go. Last part here is, what do the wise and just do? So I already gave quite a few action steps throughout the message here about how to talk, how to think, maybe anything you'd like to try in the next little while. So now I'm going to give you a specific action step of how you can get involved with IJM. And what I love about Scripture is that it's connecting always our right beliefs and right living. They go together. That's the whole book of James, is saying, faith without works is dead, right? Prove to me, show me your faith. I want to see it in the way you live, in the way that you interact with people. And so at International Justice Mission, because we believe in a just, in a righteous, in a wise God who has a design for human flourishing and society, this belief is what's motivating us, as you saw in the video, motivating us to get out there, to go to the rescue operations, to go to court, to go train police, to go again to court, just to keep going. That's what's motivating us. And after 25 years, we've seen incredible results in the lives of survivors and communities around the world. And like I said, there's a copy of our year in review out there if you want to read just some of the stories from last year. They're really, really encouraging. And so there is more justice, there is more restoration, and there is more peace than there was 25 years ago. And we believe this trajectory can only continue. Because like we saw in our verse, right? The path of the just is like the light of dawn. What happens to the dawn? It gets brighter until the full light of day. It just keeps going. And obviously then the sun sets, but then it gets brighter again, right? It's a cycle. And so that is the promise that we have before us of when we seek this path of the righteous, of the just. But we know that change also requires committed and sustained action, right? Even in the video, they said, hope is great, but hope without action is nothing. And so even in Jackie and Ruby's stories, you saw that they were in a situation, but then somebody intervened. God intervened, but he did it through people, through real people, through IJM, through our partners. And I know that he already works through you in your situations where you are right now. And so I want to encourage you to also consider joining and partnering with IJM. And the action step I'm going to give you, it actually does have direct impact on some of the people who are currently experiencing violence and oppression, who are in situations of trafficking. We can change these situations. And so, there's our verse again. If you haven't memorized it, there you go. But this is the action step I'm going to encourage you today with, is to become a freedom partner. And so you can actually scan that QR code if you want. With your cameras. For those who aren't already used to scanning QR codes, you just put your phone up to the QR code and your phone should scan it, and it's going to bring you to a website. So you can try that right now. And so I'd encourage you today to become an IJM Freedom Partner. And these are generous supporters who month after month allow IJM's work around the world to continue. And so we tend to suggest $50 a month because that is the cost of one aftercare kit for one child survivor. So as soon as they're out of that situation of trafficking, of violence, they can have a package of everything they need. That's hygiene, that's blankets, that's, maybe different clothes, so that they can feel safe right away as they start their aftercare journey. And so if after listening to this message today, you're like, you know what? I can do more than 50. Let's bring it on. I would encourage you to do that too. God sees what we're giving. If you're already giving other places, God sees it. God says, well done. Thank you for, stewarding your resources well. John gave a great, even just talk here about giving to the church and plumbing. Like these things, God sees it. They matter to God, right? And so I would encourage you to join IJM as a freedom partner. You're going to get updates. You're going to get events. You're going to get to just hear how justice and wisdom is just going out into the world. And so if you're already a partner, I wanted to say thank you every month. Some of the people that you saw in the video too, they're lawyers, they're social workers, they're activists, and they can do what they do because of generous people around the world who are committed, who are persevering, who are praying, who are advocating, and who are giving to IJM. And this is the society of wisdom and justice that Proverbs is pushing for, right? Proverbs is pushing for a just society with equality. People are flourishing. James is calling for that too. And that's also what Jesus made possible by his death and resurrection. And so we know that Jesus' life, if anything, that proved to us that pursuing justice and wisdom is going to be hard. It's going to cost something. And that's just part of the journey. But there's going to be rich blessing. There's going to be intimacy with Christ. There's going to be that community fellowship of we're all in this together. And that is what I've seen at International Justice Mission across our global teams. That's what we have with our partners. That's what the survivors have amongst each other in the Global Survivor Network. And that's even what our supporters around the world feel is like we believe in this future. We believe it. We believe who God is and what he's called us to do. We're going to speak in a way that aligns that and that encourages the world to come together, and we're going to walk the path of the just. And so, again, our best example, I talked about my summer job. My My boss was amazing. He was lovely. He gave me great training. But the person who gives us the best example and the best training for the godly path, for the path of wisdom and justice is Jesus, right? That's where everything comes back, is Jesus. And Jesus is, I learn, we all learn more about Jesus every day, every year. And everything we learn, it can show us a new aspect of Christ. And Jesus did not live a life of luxury and self-indulgence, not at all. He grew up poor. He was a laborer. He was in a marginalized community. His whole life, he had to deal with people saying things behind his back, not believing who he was, little sketchy backstory. Who are you, Jesus, talking to us? He dealt with that. He persevered, and he was in constant contact with his Father. He built a group of disciples. He showed wisdom. He sacrificed a lot. He lived in joy and deep faith, and he was committed to the end. And he showed steadfastness. He loved unto death. And this is the person that we are called to imitate. It's a high calling, but Jesus also gave us his Spirit to help power us. So we're not on our own. We have the Holy Spirit. You have a beautiful group of church people with you together, and we have the global church around the world. And so I'm going to leave you with some reflection questions, because that's what we like to do at iJam. We like to ask questions and keep thinking and then move to action. What is the path you're on? Think about where you're going right now. What are your priorities? Who's beside you? Who's walking with you? Who's actually following you? Sometimes that's something to think about. There's people watching all of you and how you walk. And then who are you following? Is it Christ, or is it other things that are kind of taking the lead right now? And so, again, those action areas, what are you believing? What are you saying? What are you doing? And so if one of the things that God is calling you to do after seeing this is, hey, I want to join with International Justice Mission. I want to be a freedom partner. I want to get involved. I want to get updates. I want to help make sure that people are not experiencing violence anymore. Then please come talk to me. I'll be in the lobby. I'm not going to have a red shirt that says Ottawa Walking Tours, but you'll be able to see me. It's a pretty small lobby. But yeah, I'd love to chat with you. I'd love to answer any questions that you might have about what we do, about our casework, about how you can get more involved. Again, I'm going to close with our passage here. The path of the just is like the light of dawn that grows brighter until the full light of day. And so my prayer for us would be that our lives would continue to just get brighter. People would see it. They'd be blessed. They would get to enjoy the wisdom and justice of God through our lives, and as society becomes more in line with his character. And I'd encourage you again to join us, to become a freedom partner, and to just continue to be inspired by the Word of God, wisdom literature, and by what's going on around the world. So thanks for listening to me, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.